Okay, so welcome everyone. I think we'll give it just a little bit more for people to join us. Okay, I think we can get started. So welcome again, everyone, to this session on global perspectives on building resilient water utilities. I am Jen Kowalski, the Water Director for RTI International, and I'll be facilitating the session. I'd like to start by recognizing the generous support of our sponsors for today's session, including the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Convening International, and World Vision. So for today's agenda, we will have opening remarks from USAID, and then we will have the General Manager for Zamboanga City Water District provide some contextual challenges and opportunities that are facing water utilities in the Philippines. And then we will have a lightning round or teasers of the 3 breakout sessions that you see listed up here. Please enter your chat on Pathable, not on Zoom. And then following the lightning round section, we'll break out into 3 groups. So to do that, you will need to exit out of this Zoom session and then enter back into the breakout room of your choice, which you'll find on the bottom of Pathable. And then the session will end in the breakout rooms. So we can get started. So Jeff Goldberg is the director of USAID's Center for Water Security, Sanitation, and Hygiene, with global responsibilities for coordinating the agency's water and sanitation related foreign assistance. He acts as a technical expert and authority and advises the agency's leadership on strategic, technical, legislative, and budgetary matters related to water and sanitation. Jeff has provided technical leadership on water and sanitation programming throughout Sub-Saharan Africa, South and Southeast Asia, and Latin America, and manages the agency's wide efforts to implement the US Global Water Strategy. So Jeff?
Great, thank you so much, Jen. And thank you to the Water Institute at UNC for this week's conference and our co-hosts for today's sessions, GETF, RTI International, and CARE. So as Jen mentioned, my name is Jeff Goldberg, and I'm the director of USAID's Center for Water Security, Sanitation, and Hygiene. And I'm incredibly excited to welcome you all to this session on building resilient utilities. We've got an exciting lineup of speakers and breakouts, but before we dive in, I want to briefly provide some opening thoughts to frame today's discussion. So as water and sanitation professionals, 2020 and 2021 have been immensely challenging, to say the least. Kind of goes without saying, but a once-in-a-lifetime global pandemic stressed water services further than before, and we lived through the hottest year on record. In some nations, civil conflict threatens to roll back gains made to water and sanitation access, and from boardrooms of large urban water utilities to rural water committee meetings, making water and sanitation services more resilient to shocks and stressors is becoming top of mind the world over. So what do we mean by all this? At USAID, we define resilience as active and deliberate actions to predict and prepare for potential risks, to respond to emergencies and recover in a way that protects against the erosion of development gains. Building resilience also means adapting and building back stronger, better, and more durable systems and more diverse and sustainable livelihoods that are less vulnerable to shocks. Demographically, resilience is important to everyone, but especially amongst the most vulnerable groups and those living on the brink of falling into poverty. It's more important than ever in the face of the trifecta of large-scale shocks that we are facing today: COVID-19, climate, and conflict. This trio of threat multipliers exacerbates water insecurity now and will only continue to compound and pose risks in the future. As if that's not enough, it's not only this trio that we're up against, though. We know that other stressors, including population growth, food insecurity, and increased demand for water and land resources, and migration, all of these intersect with the WASH sector and affect resilient service delivery. So as economies around the world contend with this triple threat of COVID, climate, and conflict, and other confounding stressors, we know that water and sanitation services play an essential role in building back better. For example, a study that's just out from WaterAid estimates that each dollar invested in WASH could generate up to a $21 return. And a UNESCO assessment estimates that 3 in 4 jobs worldwide depend on water. So simply put, I think we all certainly know this, resilient water and sanitation services are critical for business, schools, healthcare facilities, and societies to fully function and thrive in the face of adversity. Many of the service providers and USAID partners you'll hear from today are on the front lines of these recovery efforts from COVID and are forward-leaning in their approach to a range of other shocks and stressors. They are rapidly introducing new innovations and adopting approaches to making water and sanitation systems more resilient to public health emergencies, climate change, conflict, economic shocks, and more. USAID, through our US Water for the World initiative, is doubling down on efforts that adapt to climate change and build resilience to future shocks and stresses. Before we turn to the panel, I'll just provide a quick trio or sampling of this work. We'll start in South Africa. So through our WashFin program in South Africa, the agency has partnered with cities and water utilities to mobilize greater financial resources for climate resilient water and sanitation service delivery. In 2017, as we're all aware, severe water shortages in Cape Town threatened to bring a day zero in which the city's reservoirs would run out of water. During the crisis and its post-drought recovery, the agency partnered with the city's water and sanitation department to improve revenue collection for resilient water and sanitation service delivery and critical infrastructure. Through targeted technical assistance on efficiencies, including a reform to the city's customer relationship management system to address non-revenue water, our WashFin team worked with the city and generated more than 25 million in additional revenue through these efficiency gains. This is enabling Cape Town to redeploy these resources in more sustainable and climate resilient infrastructure and services. Next, we'll move to the Philippines. The Philippines is one of the world's most disaster-prone countries. Floods, storms, and rising sea levels that damage and contaminate water systems are forcing utilities to pay more for water treatment and infrastructure maintenance. Drawing on guidance from the agency's climate risk assessment and planning tools that are a requirement in our program design now, USAID Philippines partnered with utilities and local water authorities to integrate climate considerations into infrastructure design. Our aid mission in country also worked hand in hand with water service providers to conduct financial stress tests to assess revenue loss due to COVID-19 and to identify efficiency measures to ensure financial stability in the face of the pandemic. Through this support, we have helped 1.8 million Filipinos gain access to climate resilient, improved drinking water services, including people who live in conflict-affected areas, including Mindanao in the south, to keep services running during the pandemic. Finally, we'll move to Iraq. In Saran City, the Water and Development Alliance partnership between USAID, the Coca-Cola Company, and GETF is building climate resilience and sustainability through capacity building and priority infrastructure repairs. WADA is changing how the Saran City water utility approaches water challenges through providing a new framework for addressing water losses. With support from WADA, to date, repairs to the Saran water system have helped save more than 408 million liters of water per year, the equivalent of 163 Olympic-sized swimming pools, near and dear to my heart as a former swimmer. And you'll hear more about this example in the breakout session. So last but not least, resilience is all about partnerships, collaboration, and collective action to drive adaptation and achieve transformative and sustainable change. This means that WASH service providers and utilities need to be included in broader resilience efforts, such as national climate adaptation plans and pandemic economic recovery efforts. As utilities, governments, and development partners seek to address resilience to a range of shocks and stresses, we at USAID are committed to partnering and collaborating with the global WASH community to ensure our investments are future-proofed and positioned to withstand any range of scenarios. So to that effect, just a quick plug that USAID and the Department of State are seeking public comments on a refresh to our whole of government global water strategy that is due next year. Written comments are being accepted through October 29th, and we will also be hosting a live virtual public consultation on November 17th. And for more information on this, I invite you all to visit globalwaters.org. So to conclude, at USAID, we believe that the triple threat to water security posed by COVID, climate and conflict, and other confounding stressors like population growth and migration is enormous, but not insurmountable. Today's session is a fantastic opportunity to exchange knowledge and accelerate our efforts to address these challenges together. Thank you so much for being here, and I'm pleased to turn the floor back to Jen from RTI.
Thank you, Jeff. And also thank you for sharing USAID's perspectives and current activities. So next we will have context setting from Leonardo Ray Vasquez, or Cheeto for short. He's the general manager for Zamboanga City Water District in the Philippines. He's been with Zamboanga City for over 13 years, including 13 years as the general manager. So over to you, GM Cheeto.
Thank you, Jen, and good evening, everyone. The company, our company, the Zamboanga City Water District, is fortunate to have been chosen to share with you our experiences and responses to threats and shocks, be it man-made, natural, and this COVID-19 pandemic. Our office is a government-owned and controlled water utility. Zamboanga City is located at the southernmost tip of the Philippine Islands. As shown in the slide, we have a population of roughly about 1 million. Our office does not only provide water supply services to the people of Zamboanga, but also helps maintain and protect about 12,500 hectares of watershed. We cater to about 67,000 service connections. Our minimum monthly water tariff is at US $4.20. And this is for the first 10 cubic meter of water. To put it simply, 1 cubic meter of water is equivalent to about 264 gallons. The initial water system was built in 1911 during the American time. And up to now, we are still using this infrastructure. However, we really need to replace this as our non-revenue water is quite high. Next slide, please. Basically, we have three major threats. First is terrorism. In 2013, the so-called Zamboanga siege was experienced by our city. Second is drought, or the El Niño, climate shocks, that we are now experiencing more frequently. Prior to these recent hard climate shocks, the last time we experienced was way back in 1997, 1998. The third, which we are facing right now, is this COVID-19 pandemic. Let me share with you our experiences, what we have done, and are still doing to adapt and to prepare for this kind of threats, and continue to provide basic water services to our citizens. Zamboanga City. On September 9, 2013, we woke up to the sounds of gunfire, which was really a shock on our part. Close to 500 members of the Moro National Liberation Front attacked the city, covering 5 barangays near the city government seat of power, the City Hall of Zamboanga. What ensued was a fierce battle that stretched for 3 weeks. This humanitarian crisis paralyzed operations, businesses, and cost lives. Offices, especially in the downtown areas, were closed. Fortunately, our treatment facilities are located about 7 kilometers away from the central area. We were able to continue our office operations and that of our water production and distribution system. We use gravity in our system. We closely coordinated with the Philippine Marines deployed in the affected barangays to help us recover the chemicals needed for our operations inside the ground zero. Had we run out of chemicals during that time, we were all set to advise our consumers to boil their water before drinking. Sorry. In monitoring the security status of our production wells, we had to utilize passwords to verify the identity of the person on the other line. We also mobilized our water tankers 24/7 to deliver water to more than 115,000 internally displaced persons. These were just some of the things that we had to carry out to manage the crisis and to make sure that water distribution was not interrupted during that time, because it was a paramount objective. Water service operation must continue. Having experienced such catastrophe led us to the formulation of our own emergency response plan and the disaster and risk reduction management plan. Next slide, please. Mark? Hello? Thank you. For the 2016, 2019, 2020 El Nino drought, we knew that drier years would be coming, but we did not expect it to be this soon. When the city was hit by the El Nino in 2016, 2019, 2020, water levels at our Pasunangka diversion wave dropped, resulting to only about 50% production. Production by our bulk water supplier reached as low as 20%, a reduction of 80%. It was indeed very difficult for us that we have no choice but to resort to stringent water rationing. What made the situation worse was that families could not afford to store water properly. The sanitation and hygiene became a problem. In 2016, contaminated water caused a severe rotavirus outbreak that claimed 9 lives and more than 1,000 people were hospitalized. Vulnerability assessment was conducted to identify, quantify, and prioritize the weaknesses and vulnerabilities of the Zamboanga City water district system, focusing on the most common climate-related hazards. One of the proposals being considered at the time was the construction of a wall under the riverbed to stop water from seeping to the lower grounds. We also started discussing on transboundary water agreements to ensure water supply during drier months. Another crucial tool that we formulated was the water safety plan to ensure clean and safe water supply and provide standards for prevention and elimination of possible contamination from the source, treatment, storage, and distribution networks. Next slide, please. Loans from our regulatory body, the Local Water Utilities Administration, with the help of the Asian Development Bank, had to be secured in order to address the non-revenue water dilemma of our office. Of the 800 million peso loan, more than 60% will be allocated to non-revenue reduction. We are also focusing on the expansion because of the need to catch up with the growing demands of the population and the industries. Our present tariff cannot address these additional costs. This is also the reason why our assets are deteriorating faster than we can replace them. The challenge lies on how to convince our local leaders to support the increase in our rates. By the way, while we are a government-owned and controlled corporation, we neither receive financial subsidy from the local nor the national government. Next slide, please. Recognizing the need for a sustainable and stable water supply and water security to meet the growing demands of a water-stressed city, the establishment of a water impounding dam was proposed. The recommended scheme involves constructing a 105-meter high earth-filled dam capable of providing about 216 million liters per day of sustainable water that can be used for domestic and hydro purposes. Regarding the rainwater harvesting ordinance, we collaborated with the local government unit of Zamboanga City to draft and implement city ordinance requiring and setting the guidelines for proper rainwater harvesting measure in the city. As regards to our water demand management program, the WDM program is a multifaceted approach to tackling the issue of water sustainability and security by developing tailored strategies and activities to establish a balance between water supply and demand from the community up to the national level. We had to do this because we also had to take a look at how consumers will use the water. In 2017, we launched the pioneering water audit toolkits, a practical resource that details the fundamentals and mechanics of an effective water audit program. Next slide, please. The third and final threat is the COVID-19 pandemic. Since COVID-19 is here to stay, the only way we can address it is to adapt and live with it. All of us had to adapt to a new way of living, working, socializing, managing our health, and the list goes on and on. We initially had a 2-month lockdown while we had to continue to operate because water is essential. Collection of our sales had to stop. We had to use our savings. During this period, we did not make any water disconnection, and field personnel had to continue working to deliver the needed public services. We had to provide them with, of course, alcohol, masks, face shields, PPEs. By April of 2020, we had to open our collection centers as we were running out of funds. It was fortunate that our city government gave us a one-time assistance of $10 per connection. The formulation of the business continuity and recovery plan was done as one of the primary knowledge resources to direct the development of our office, protocols and strategies to effectively and efficiently sustain core operations. We implemented also the Civil Service Commission guidelines on alternative work arrangements in government to align with the community quarantine rules issued by the Interagency Task Force on the management of emerging infectious diseases. We also adopted the work from home arrangement, skeleton workforce, and different scheme based on operational capacity, providing essential or critical services. In line with our goal to have contactless transactions in the delivery of government services, it saved both the government employee and the transacting public from the risk of exposure to COVID-19. Through the use of information technology implemented online, customer portal to access billing information, billing inquiry service through short messaging or SMS text, online submissions of application for water, intensify the use of social media platforms like Facebook, Viber, and other group chats to receive customer concerns and complaints. We also intensified the use of online meetings, conferences platform, electronic digital exchanges, and approval of documents. I used to sign papers, and right now, every day when I work, I will receive between 50 to 60 emails a day. Next slide, please. We entered into agreements with collection agencies so that we will have lesser physical contacts with our clients. Expanded our collection payment through third-party payment integrators, like the over-the-counter partners with thousands of branches nationwide, banks, online, mobile wallets, lessening transactions volume in our offices. The local government unit created the Water Security Council headed by the Vice Mayor. Next slide, please. I think the picture will tell this it all. The images show that the COVID-related measures and protocols being implemented in the office. These are common scenarios nowadays in other establishments, I guess in most part of the world. Our challenge now, I guess it's same with you also, is how to get our employees vaccinated. While we are pleased with the availability of vaccines, there are still a number of individuals who are against it or are afraid of it due to misinformation and fake news. Just in our office, I think 35 to 40% of all employees are not yet vaccinated because of fear. Fake news spread and travel faster on social media than truth and positive content. Constant and intensified information campaign is needed more than ever to help influence people to accept that vaccine is safe and effective and reduces a person's risk in getting infected with the COVID-19 virus. More importantly, the benefits of vaccination outweighs its risks. Next slide, please. This is our septage plan. With the frequent El Nino shocks, we are starting to look into the possibility of water reuse or new water, just like what they are doing in Singapore. Wastewater, we agree, must be managed properly. Proper sanitation will reduce the risk of virus contamination. It is a matter of caring for our environment and for our own health. Next slide, please. And because of these threats or shocks, we are working to convene most of the sectors and public leaders to work together for the water security master plan of Zamboanga City. It is my hope and aspiration that one day, someday, we will achieve this dream. And with that, next slide, please. I'd like to thank all of you for your time. Muchísimas gracias a todos. Good evening.
Thank you so much, GM Chito, for sharing your perspectives and experiences in Zamboanga. Okay, so the next section will be the lightning roundtable. So each of our speakers will be advocating for you to join them in their breakout room. So we have Monica Tobar from CARE Ecuador, Mark Detman from GETF, and then Ari Istander from RTI. So Monica, do you want to sell your breakout room?
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. For CARE Ecuador, it's a pleasure to share this space with all of you. We invite to join us in our breakout group, which we will be presenting the experience implemented in the Pedro Moncayo Canton. Is a location near to Quito, the capital of Ecuador. In this location, CARE accompanied to the local government to develop a landscape model that includes the engagement of the public water utility and the private sector for the conservation and protection of the highland paramo ecosystems. And of course, this would not be have been possible if we have not worked with the community, the local organization led by women and private companies. And with all of them, we carry out a lot of actions to assure that the mechanism of the water fund for the development of this location. So we are waiting for you to comment in more detail on this successful experience and initiative that it is being scaled up in another cities of our country. So thank you so much, and we are waiting for you.
Okay, Mark.
Great. Thanks, Jen. Thanks, Monica. My name is Mark Detman. I'm the Program Director for the Water and Development Alliance at the Global Environment Technology Foundation. WADA is a global partnership between Coca-Cola and USAID focused on addressing water challenges and building water security around the world. So during our breakout session, we're going to dive deeper into how a water utility in Iraq is addressing the trifecta of challenges that Jeff had mentioned around COVID, climate, and conflict. So our breakout session is going to be looking at that activity through our WADA Iraq project, or Tajid project, which means renewal in Arabic. And this project seeks to renew the water sources by stabilizing water access and reducing losses. For some brief context, when the project first began, the residents of Soran city in the Kurdistan region of Iraq had access to around half of the country's minimum per capita allocation of water. And the drinking water system in Soran has multiple water sources supplies such as rivers, springs, and wells. And similar to other medium-sized or secondary cities around the world, the issue is not availability of water, but rather the management of the available water resources. There is challenges around the unsustainable water use practices, both at across the local, provincial, and national level, and also the water network system, which was encountering a lot of losses, or had high levels of non-revenue water, all of which had an impact on Iraqi communities, water security, and their climate resilience. So other challenges of an increasing population and growing economy, meeting coming ahead with climate change, which was presenting both flood and drought, had an influence on the water cycle, which affected other sectors, food, energy, urban growth, and environmental systems, putting further strain on already stressed water systems. So to address these challenges with support from USAID and the Coca-Cola Foundation, Convening, our implementing partner, worked with the Saran Water Directorate, the service provider, water utility, and the municipality of Saran on a variety of concurrent and complementary tracks to enhance management practices, reduce physical losses, and encourage water conservation, all of which are proven approaches for improving water security and combating climate change. Understanding where the losses are occurring is the first step for improving efficiency and can help guide investment in water infrastructure for years to come because of the network improvements. So this work is still ongoing, and we're excited to scale up this work in more areas in Saran. And we welcome you to join our session to dive deeper into the methodology and achievements that were achieved under phase 1. We have a great panel of speakers with USAID and Convening to share more of their insights, and we also look forward to the lessons learned that you might have from your own experience working with utilities. So thank you.
Great. And Ari.
Thank you. Thanks, Jen. Thanks, Mark and Monica. Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone. So I think before me, obviously this morning, Jeff and GM Chito highlighted some of the context where we're here. The trifecta issues of conflict, COVID, and climate change. So we at RTI are wondering and pondering as well, being a research institute, of how ready are water utilities to address these trifecta issues and other things like urbanization? And can these challenges actually be turned into opportunities for greater change or reform? GM Chito talked about the water security plan, emergency plans. Do some utilities have them? If they haven't, do they need to prepare one? If they do have one, do they need to adjust to COVID pandemic risk? And basically understanding risk. So we thought about 2 questions, basically: how prepared are water utilities, and mostly addressing mid-sized utilities. And again, how can we turn all these constraints and challenges and issues and even best practices into something for future reform? Next slide, please. So at RTI, we actually did an internal study, internally funded study, to look at business continuity and mostly at operational resilience. We talked about resilience earlier, but here we're looking at operational issues. We started the study in early 2021 or late 2020 in 8 countries. You see the countries here, 5 in the greater continent of Africa, 2 in Southeast Asia, and 1 in Central America. We featured about 52 utilities, mostly or all mid-sized, relatively mid-sized utilities in secondary towns and so forth. And you see on the right here, we've kind of gone through this process of doing a lit review, desk study. We did look at the work that's been done with Rock Blue, UN Habitat through GWAPA, USAID itself, UNICEF, and trying to understand the kind of results or even activities that they've done. And also we conducted this study basically through a survey. So we did reach out to these 52 respondents and try to get as much information as we can. If you look at the chart, we're actually at the data analysis part. So we are just wrapping up some of the data collection now, cleaning, validating, and checking and analyzing them. And we're in the midst of, obviously the next step is to discuss and share the lessons and learn from you all on how that results are being presented. So these are some of the topics we cover. I mentioned operational resilience. So we're looking at operating conditions, financial management. GM Chito mentioned about revenue issues, right? With bill payments, for example, being deferred or postponed. How does that affect the utility that needs to continue to operate in these challenging times? How do you engage customers? How do you relate to them? How do you, address some of the demands that they're also asking, being at home, increasing demand for water. Supply chain, this is obviously not just in the water sector, but in all sectors. Where do I get my chemicals? Do I need to keep my inventory instead of every 6 months for a year now? Where do I store these things? GM Chito highlighted all the issues with staff safety, having PPE and even concerns with vaccination and so forth. How do we deal with that? And obviously working from home and also emergency plan. So next slide, please. Last slide. So yes, we're gonna talk more about the results of at least some preliminary results of our study at our breakout session here in group 3. That's the first thing we're gonna do. The second thing is we're gonna hear from different perspectives and reactions to some of the challenges here we talked about, from GM Chito again to join us from the Philippines, Dr. Rose from Uganda National Water and Sewers Corporation, and also Maurice Tobin, former Director of Engineering at the Palm Beach County Water Department in Florida, to kind of share the ideas. And the third thing we want to hear is obviously from the audience here. So come and join us. We want to learn and hear from you as well on maybe some of the things you've been doing or encountering as utilities, as practitioners. So we look forward for you to join us at group 3. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Ari. So remember that in order to join one of the breakout rooms, you need to exit this Zoom, and then in Pathable, go find the breakout room that you'd like to join. So we'll end in the breakout rooms. Thank you very much.